Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Retro Rides podcast. I'm Cameron and with me is Rich.
Great to be here again this week, Cam. Excited to talk about the classic car scene and what's been going on in the market. Let's get
There's
into it.
There's a lot going on. Bernie Ecclestone, the Formula One Supremo, or former Formula One Supremo, that's a bit of a mouthful, has an incredible car collection that he's offloading at age 94. They're expecting this to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
An incredible collection of Formula One cars dating right back to when Bernie was a team owner.
Yes, and even before, he's got some Bandini cars from the 60s and a Van Wall from the 1950s. He's got Sterling Moss's a Van Wall. He's got Schumacher's 2022 championship winning car.
2002.
2002, thank you. Championship winning car. He's got the Brabham fan car, that was raced by Niki Lauda.
The one that was
raced
barred.
once and was banned.
Yep.
And obviously a lot of super cool Brabhams.
28 Brabhams. 28. It's just insane.
Yes, and interestingly, he's chosen his mate Tom Hartley rather than one of the bigger, perhaps named dealers or auction houses. They're mates from a while back. So that'll be pretty interesting. But some of those cars, I understand that the Bandini Ferrari, which is also driven by Surtees, is exactly the same as it left the factory. It's on the same tyres as it was in 1960. No one else has sat or driven that car other than Bandini and Surtees. And apparently it's the most original Ferrari racing car known to man.
Wow,
so
incredible.
That's probably my favourite out of the collection. Yeah. But I'd take any of those F1 cars, Cam.
Absolutely. Well, there is a story on retrorides.com.au if you want to check out a little bit more information. But yeah, big news there from Bernie Ecclestone. And Rich, you've been out and about, Auto Brunch. What was going on there?
Yeah, I love getting out and about to shows as often as I can. Cam, a couple of weeks ago went to the Donington Auctions Auto Brunch, which is run by the North Shore Sporting Car Club at St Ives Showground. Always an awesome show. Bacon and egg roll, coffee. Everyone's out on the main field, and yeah, just a really eclectic bunch of cars.
Well, I was about to say, what sort of cars can you?
Well, you get everything there. Not so much on the supercar side. There's a lot of rallying stuff because the club has a history in rallying. So some of the road versions of rally cars, the Integrales and like the Dado 1600s. But we get all sorts. Obviously Porsches are popular at all the shows. But it's a real enthusiast show, so people that put a lot of love into their cars. It's been going for a couple of years. It's on the first Sunday of every month. Recommend checking that out.
All right.
And
actually, while you're on that, if you guys out there are involved in a car club, make sure you register your events at retrorides.com.au. We're out there promoting as many events as we can. We want to build that car club culture out there. So if you've got a car club event coming up, be sure to jump on the website and register all the details for your event.
Sounds good. And another show I went to the other day was with a club called the Motorheads. Now, great story behind this club. It was actually started by a very lovely gentleman called Paul Lee, who's a fanatical Porsche guy. He started with a WhatsApp group with a couple of his mates, and 5 years later, he just had a Christmas party, five-story car park in Concord. Had 3 stories full of cars. There's about 250 cars there. Had an Asian food stall and some hot dogs and pizzas, and it was all included in the fee. Just goes to show the scene's alive and well, and a huge amount of sort of classic guys in that club. But shows again that some of the traditional car clubs, you don't need to necessarily have all the bells and whistles like previously. This is just all run on a WhatsApp. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Fantastic. Well, mate, there's a lot going on. There's been a lot going on. Even Jaguar, I think, have released finally a picture of a car. We'll leave it up to people to have a look at that themselves. There's really not much to talk about there, in my opinion. And you've got an interesting guest coming up as well. So I'm going to leave you guys, and Rich is going to have a chat to someone that I think you'll all be pretty interested in.
Rich's Talk. I'm here today with Mark Hawwa. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're a serious motorhead and car and bike guy. Let's talk about, though, that first spark, the first car or the first time you saw something you said, I need to be involved with cars.
First car, Mazda RX-7.
Yep.
And I was basically driving and I pulled up to this petrol station and there was this old Lebanese guy and I said, I love your car, I'd love to buy it. And I don't think I've ever looked at a Mazda RX-7. Didn't know that there were rotaries back then. Didn't know the difference between the engines. And he said, yeah, cool, 500. I said, sweet, I'll pull it out of the ATM now. And he goes, no, 5,000. I've gone, okay, I'll come see you tomorrow. And I got his address and his details. And I went to his house with $4,500 of cash. And I walked into the backyard and I put it on a table. And his wife sat there and said, oh my God, I've never seen so much money before. And he looked at me and he said, Mark, it was 5,000. And I said, oh, we're ethnic, we negotiate. And he looked at me and he said, help me install the antenna and you can have it for 4.5. So I spent 2 hours helping him install a new antenna and took that car for $4,500. And then that was, I guess, where my love of Mazda rotaries began.
Right, and you have a little collection now. You like your classics, and Mazda seems to be your favourite brand. Tell us about some of your other things, like your Cosmo. That's quite an interesting car.
Yeah, I think for me it was growing up. My parents never had money, so for us Mazdas were always affordable. So RX-7s were, $4,000, $5,000, and you can extract a whole heap of power out of them for not very much money. And so 200 horsepower back then in an RX-7 was a lot of fun. And ultimately kept on playing with Mazdas throughout the entire period. But the dream very early on became owning a Mazda Cosmo 110S, which is the first ever Mazda that had the rights from NSU Wankel to reproduce the rotary engine.
Okay, so it's the first Mazda that's...
It's the first Mazda rotary, yeah.
Okay.
And so that was the goal, and I was able to achieve that probably just before COVID. Yeah, it would have been just before COVID because that's when prices obviously shot up. So just before COVID, I found one in Japan, called a friend of mine that imports cars, and asked him if he could get one of his guys over there to look at it. And he said, Mark, I'm in Japan. I'll go check it out.
Yeah, and you got a famous number plate on that car you had there for a while too. You were into custom plates. What was the plate on there?
Slow, S-L-O-W. I thought it was very relevant.
Very apt because they're not very fast, but a good looking machine.
But funnily enough, I mean, it's still 110 horsepower and quite light, so it still moves, and it's an interesting car because it still feels like you forget that you're in an old car when you're in that car. Everything's so comfortable in it. Everything's so tight. Like it must have been restored in Japan because for a 55-year-old car,
yeah, it's good enough.
It's in amazing condition.
And classics in general. If I was to throw out to you, 3 of your all-time classics, if you could put it in your garage, price no object, what would you add?
If price wasn't irrelevant, because I mean, if price was, I'd sit there and say, Ferrari 250 GTO, and I'd sell it and buy everything else that I wanted. But probably the Cosmo's up there on the list. The Toyota 2000 GT.
Okay.
Again, probably one of the most iconic cars to come out of Japan. And a GT40. I've always loved the shape and the style of the GT40.
Hard
but
not to love
vans. I love bread vans as well. So it's like, Ferrari bread van would be nice as well. And that's what I liked about my Lotus Europa is it's got that Hearst shape to it. Yeah.
Now the Lotus you've had for a while, and it reminds me we were talking before the show about some of the most fun you've had driving or in a car, and take me back to some of the in-fast rallies that you were doing with your pals and how that came to be, and what were the rules around having a car in the in-fast rally scene.
That was a heap of fun, and we're a hell of a lot younger and probably a little bit more loose. Actually, no, we're probably the same. It started off because I had the Lotus Europa and my mate Mickey Young had a Datsun 240Z. And we thought, you know what, let's just go for a really long drive. And we found all these beautiful roads all the way down to the Great Ocean Road. And we basically enthusiastically drove all the way down there.
But I understand the cars had to be a certain era and didn't have to have some period graphics on them as well, and some R-Spec tyres. There was a bit more to it, wasn't there?
The whole idea was making it look like an old school rally. So we stickered everything up, and that first year was really just us having a whole heap of fun. We had a vinyl cutter in my office, and we just had a few drinks and made something special out of that. But then after that first year, it was really about our mates then looking at it going, oh, actually, we want to take part in this. And then it just kept on growing. And so now if we do a rally, we get 20 to 25 mates that will take
fantastic. And sometimes you go to the Grand Prix and do a big
all classic drive cars. So primarily like pre-90s.
Okay.
But a lot more, enthusiastic around the sports side of cars. But even, I remember the first year when I got back, the Lotus engine died. And so the second year I took the Mazda 1500, which was a 4-door, you know, piston car, and by the time we got down to the Great Ocean Road, we took the angle grinder to the exhaust and had it make a little bit more noise, had redone the suspension on it, and it was 4 on the column. I can't use the sound obviously, but 4 on the column, manual.
Yeah.
And it didn't really matter about how much power you had. I think
I think that's
it's just fun times.
common things with cars is you don't necessarily, driving a slow car 10 tenths is often more fun than a fast car. So you've always enjoyed your events, and famously, you're the founder of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is a global motorcycle event you've been running for 10 or 12 years. Amazing job you've done with that event, raising over 70 million Australian dollars, which goes to Movember and Men's Health. And as part of that, you now have a Distinguished Gentleman's Drive, which has been going for the last 4 years. Tell us a bit about the inspiration for both of those, and what you've learned about the bike scene and the classic car scene, and what the plans are for this the event in September.
Yeah, so Gentleman's Ride was 12 years ago, and the whole idea behind that one was just breaking the stereotype of people riding motorcycles being, I guess, negative or a 1%er, which sort of existed in a lot of different sort of places around the world. And so it was, how do we get dressed up in suits and showcase a different side to motoring? And then we started raising money for, funnily enough, it was the Prostate Cancer Foundation, which is located next to where we are here, Australia. And then it just continued to grow until we built it out into a relationship which was truly global with Movember. But that ride is now in 1,000 cities across 105 countries, 107,000 riders. And
wow.
The whole idea with that is how do you sort of break the stigma of prostate cancer, because back then, a lot of guys thought it was a finger up the backside. They didn't realize that there's a blood test that you can do now to get your levels. And so it was, how do we sort of educate men? And then we lost one of our ride hosts to suicide, and we thought, okay, well, how do we start allocating some of those funds into suicide awareness programs and mental health?
Yep.
And so now we've got this split of 50-50 between prostate cancer and suicide prevention. But obviously this ride had just grown with all these classic bikes. We were sponsored by Triumph Motorcycles for the last 10 years, and that continues. But my first ever passion was classic cars. And so the idea was, okay, well, we've got this event that's running successfully. Don't get me wrong, a logistical nightmare, but successfully. How do we start opening this up to the guys that have classic cars that want to take part?
Yep.
And so 4 years ago we started, and it's slowly been growing. And I think for us, some of the it's a different style of event. You've got
Tell us about if people want to get involved and they want to get a car ready for September. What do they need to do, and what does the day look like? I understand they can do their own drive, get a group of people together in any state, organise a route somewhere to catch up for a coffee, and just get together. Is it as simple as as that?
You've got flagship events where if people don't want to organise things because they're busy, they can join a drive that's already been set up, and most of the main cities have a flagship event. But then car clubs can also get involved because they can set up an event for themselves.
Yep.
And they can determine whether or not they want that event to be private or if they want it to be public, so that they can invite more people to check out their car club, become a part of that fold. Because really at the basis of everything that we do is social connectivity. It's people meeting like-minded people, connecting, developing friendships, developing relationships, but also doing it for a good cause. So the whole idea is dress up dapper, jump in your classic car, go meet some fellow enthusiasts, and at the end of the cars and coffee essential style of the event, go for a drive.
And Mark, what do you think makes the Australian classic scene unique? You've been all over the world as part of the the DGR, and I understand you've been and met Jay Leno and been through his garage, and we'll talk about Jay in a sec. But what makes the Australian scene unique in your eyes?
I think one, we've got way better weather, so we can meet up way more often, and I think that's something that we've seen across our events. Is obviously we don't have cold winters, so we get to stay social the entire time. We've got amazing roads. I mean, you look up going north, south, not east, but west, and we've got amazing roads, especially here in Sydney anyway. I mean, you've got 3 different paths that you can take, which is always great to sort of connect with other car people and motorbike people. You've got like Pie in the Sky, you've got
all these great little destinations.
Stairwell tops, so even if you're bored, you can head down and you'll end up having a conversation with anyone. And I think that's the spirit of Australians, is being able to converse with anyone and being able to connect with anyone and be social. But EP2, I think really you probably get that in a lot of different places around the world as well. I don't know if it makes it truly unique. Because everywhere that I've gone and done events at, I feel like I'm here at the Sydney version of that event.
Yeah, right. And so you've been to the States and you've met Jay, and he
Yeah.
took you through his garage. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
That was cool because I sent him an email because I'd been in contact with him before about some gentleman's ride stuff, and I sent him an email, and it'd been years, and I just said, hey, come to the States, would love to come check out the garage, and I sent him my number, and he couldn't get in contact with me because the phone number Australia, I think I forgot to put the +61 or whatever it is that was needed. But I had an email and I gave him a call, and he answered and he said, Mark, where are you? And I said, I'm in Burbank. And he goes, that's where my garage is. And then he sent me the address, and I went and caught up with him, and he was awesome. He gave me about an hour and a half of his time.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Took me through his whole collection. He also had a Cosmo 110S there, which was exciting to see.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's the thing about car guys, isn't it? We're all equal.
Yeah.
Jay Leno or whoever it may be. And I've got to throw out there too a bit of a challenge. So you got 100K, turns up in your letterbox tomorrow, and you got to buy a classic, so something pre-2000. What's on your shopping list? What are the couple of cars that would be on your radar?
You reckon I could get an E-Type 2+2 for under 100?
Oh yes, I think you probably could sneak one in. I think they're slowly on the.
Yeah,
apparently the 2+2s they're not as popular.
It's funny, they're not as popular, but visually I actually really like them. I think I've always liked wagons and longer shapes towards the back, so I'd definitely go for an E-Type. I'm really. I was on car sales last night, and I'm missing a V8, and I drove a mate's Stingray. And not an expensive car.
Which version?
70s.
Yeah, okay.
Not an expensive car, but I was like, I feel like I'm missing a V8 in my collection.
Yeah.
I've got 6s, 4s, rotaries, but I don't have a V8, and so really, maybe even a really nice Corvette Stingray. Yeah. I know they're not rare or anything like that, but there's something about that torque that I really enjoyed, and it's very agricultural. Reminded me of riding a Harley Davidson.
Yeah, you actually have to kind of. Yeah, no, I mean that's the beauty of cars, isn't it? They're like time capsules. They have a feel, don't they, from the era that's limited by the handling or the gearbox or the way it was put together. Pretty interesting stuff. And what about money no object? What would you have as a daily? So old or new?
As a daily.
As a daily. What makes a great daily, do you think?
One of those new Jaguars.
Yeah, well, let's.
I'm joking. A daily. Well, let's look at my last daily. My last daily was a Kia Stinger.
Oh yeah.
I thought that bang for buck, that was an amazing car. And then now.
And what was it? What was it like?
Oh, it was fast for a daily car.
Yeah.
Comfort wise, it was amazing. Traction control off. It was a great car. The Ineos Grenadier is my daily car now.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's a mix actually. I've got the GTR 35 as a daily.
And the Ineos.
And
why the Ineos?
We had a relationship with Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his son George because they sponsored Distinguished Gentleman's Ride through Belstaff Clothing.
Yep.
So that relationship was there, and then they started talking about the car, and I got interested and I got excited. And BMW powered.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a retro machine. Obviously, it's
modern retro.
Modern retro. It's supposed to be an old Land Rover looking thing, and it's got the BMW drivetrain. How's that been?
It goes really well.
It goes all right.
It's surprising how well that goes, and I'm not a four-wheel drive guy by any means, but I took it to Stockton Beach and got bogged twice, which was great. Cut the exhaust off, the muffler off, and straight piped it, and it's just enough noise that it's not abusive, but it's comfortable, and it's like having a bimodal exhaust. Really, it's that little bit louder when you give it a bit of throttle, but. I mean, back to your question, what would I have as a daily car? I mean, I'm really happy with
those machines.
With those machines at the moment.
You mentioned Jaguar. It's in the news at the moment. It's hard not to talk about it, and it leads us to electrification and what's going on with brands. What is your take on electric cars? As a classic car guy, most of the people we chat to are not enthusiasts. Where do you stand on electrification?
I think I sit on the fence because it's an interesting one, and it was interesting even with the Jaguar stuff because one of my mates put a post up about it, and they asked me if I liked it, and I said I refuse to say anything because I've shifted so many times from believing that I was so against something to then going, actually, this is pretty cool. With time, like RX-8s, I hated them. Now look at them and I go, they're okay. Electric, I enjoy the power. There's no doubt about it, even on motorcycle and in cars. What the problem that I have is at the best of times, if I'm doing a drive, if it's a straight road, I want to fall asleep. In an electric car, I want to fall asleep even faster. There's no, I don't feel
it's
a passion. I don't
missing
feel a
the
connection to
atmosphere.
it.
Yeah, it's
so
very
once they sort of
tricky.
start to bring that into it, I don't know how. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, if you were the CEO of Jag right now, and you didn't have your hands tied by the fact that you're owned by the Indians, and you must produce an electric vehicle, what would you do with the brand? What would you sell?
I'm okay with the electric side of Jaguar. I mean, for me, that's not an issue. I mean, obviously, I'd be looking into other means as well, because I don't think electric is the only answer in the future. But ultimately, there's some okay shapes on that vehicle. It just needs to be done differently. I think it's far too, I guess, modern in its approach. I think the commercial and the rest of it, cool, quirky, look more like a makeup commercial than it did.
Got plenty of attention on them. They're obviously just going to go.
Hey, it worked. It worked. But for me, I think there are renders and AI versions of that car that I've seen on social media where I sit there and I go, oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
and they're very similar. It's just little tweaks.
Yeah, are they going to sell? I mean, it's a long car. It's like almost 6 meters long. I understand.
Oh wow.
I don't know. I think they're going to have trouble selling them. If it was me, I'd be bringing back, continuation E types, C types.
If it was me, I'd be firing the CEO.
Yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting one. I notice, we're both into our bikes, and you see it more in the bike scene. They're very good at selling retro editions and heritage editions, and we don't see as much of that in the car world. Obviously, you've got your some of your hero cars like your Mustangs that have got great heritage, and Z cars have got great heritage. But I think the bike guys do that really, really well.
I agree with you. They nail it. When you look at the modern classic range of motorcycles, every brand has them. And I think that's why I connected with the Ineos Grenadier, because to me that's a modern retro.
Yeah.
It's sort of got that vibe, but it's all modern technology. And I think people just appreciate having something that sometimes looks like a classic car.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like something 50 years down the track. And I think Jaguar's focused on what their path is 50 years down the track.
Yeah, it's interesting. What would you bring back if there was a classic that was on the market as a continuation? What would you rush out to buy?
I would still just wish, I really wish that I was in a position to buy one of those GT40s that they made in, 2005?
Okay, yeah, the 2005 model.
I love two-door sports cars. I think for me, two-door, two-seater sports cars is where it's at. If a modern retro Jaguar E-Type, 100%.
Yeah.
And people would absolutely hate me for it, but I don't
Yeah,
mind
I think you'd sell them. I'd love to buy a 70s 911 off the shelf, like a brand new one with some mod cons.
Yeah. And you can use it as a daily, but then also have your fun with it on the track.
I'm surprised they don't. I mean, I guess they don't need to, but I'm surprised people don't do more of it. And what to sort of finish up, mate, when you're going from A to B on these drives, what do you got on your stereo? What powers your journey, Mark? What do you like to listen to?
We can. Oh man, my taste in music is so eclectic. It's basically everything except for death metal. If I can't connect with the words, I won't listen to it. But let's look at the track that I drove here to, Psycho Killers.
Oh, the Talking Heads.
I couldn't remember saying that. But that was the track that was playing on the way here as I pulled up into the car park. So it's always a mix. I've got some cars that have got CD players that if I've bought the car and it came with that CD from the previous owner, it stays
stays in there.
It stays in there. And I think that's the one that I've got in the RX-7 at the moment. My white RX-7 is Offspring. Best of Offspring, and that stays in it, never gets changed. Even if I'm doing a 7-day drive in that car, it's that CD the whole time. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Mark, thank you very much for joining us today. It's fascinating to chat, understand a bit more about your collection, and congratulations again on both your events. And certainly looking forward to seeing you at the drive this year. We'll be participating. So great to see you, mate.
Awesome. I'll see you at the drive next year as well.
Hammer time.
So it's hammer time. Rich, again.
Hammer time.
Again, a very, very active week in the market.
Yeah, people buying and selling cars all over the place.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd choose a couple of really interesting machines this week, Cam, to have a look at to see what your money's buying. Over at Collecting Cars, a fantastic Citroen DS drophead went for 120,500 plus fees.
Look, I don't know. I think it's a very niche market, the Citroën market.
Very
but,
passionate market.
You know, you think back, this is a beautiful looking motor car. There's really nothing else quite like it.
Ahead of its time.
Ahead of its time. You know, adjustable, I think, ride height,
Yeah,
and
air
suspension,
suspension.
turning headlights, all sorts of cool
Single
features.
spoke steering wheel.
Yep, a very, very cool looking car.
Super
So,
aerodynamic.
you know, 120 grand for something that is really a very, very original, a very,
Yeah,
very
no, I thought
cool
it was
car.
I thought it was a cool car. I'd love to own one.
Yep.
There's some other cool cars out there.
At the other end of the scale, something a little bit more modern.
Yeah. Your favourite thing, big V8 family saloons.
Big Thumper.
Big
yeah,
Thumper, the
but
Holden GTSR, which
Yeah,
was
the
a special, and this
GTSR.
one only had 28 kilometres on it.
28 kilometres, still plastic wrapped on the interior, and a really, really incredible car. These cars were projected a couple of years ago to do insane money, and we're seeing a bit of a correction in these late model HSVs.
Yep, 144 plus fees.
144 is good buying, I think, for that car.
Yeah.
And you know, when we've seen GTSs sort of in the high 120s, 130s on offer over the last 12 or 18 months, I think that car at that price.
Yeah, it's a good buy.
is
Someone got a good buy on
buying.
that one. But that's, you know, if you want to shift them, you got to play to the market.
Meet the market.
Got to meet the market. Speaking of meeting the market, a quite original 1973 Australian Mazda RX-3, $81,000, coupe, gold. Not my style of vehicle, but what a price.
Not mine either, but we've seen a few over the last 12 months or so up around this kind of money, and some around the 90K mark. So it's good buying. They're a rare thing. People love them. I know a guy's got one stashed away.
Yeah.
They're they're a real 70s, 80s sort of throwback.
Yeah.
Not that far removed really from the 1600, but having that rotary engine is what makes them so valuable.
And I think the two doors, the coupe.
Two-door coupe,
you know.
but they were a Nana car in the day.
Yeah, but
If Nana was in a hurry.
fast nanas delivering to you.
That's right.
Oh dear, what would they be bringing?
I don't know.
Let's not go there. One of my other favourite machines during the week, a '64 Corvette Stingray. I mean, I love the old American Corvettes.
Yeah, very nice car, I think.
C2.
Yeah, what's $95,000?
$95,000, I think that's about right. About 100 will get you a very nice one of those. I think they just get better and better looking, and they've held their value really well. Those Corvettes. So that was a good to see that one go. And over at Trading Garage, you know, the Porsche market just never stops, does it? A 1988 3.2 Porsche Club Sport, 220 at the hammer plus fees. Again, very strong money for what was a very simple stripped out car. The Club Sport didn't have any door handles, had the little trims. It was a lighter car. This was a white one. Just shows this, you know, people. They just love those.
They love the 911.
They love the 911s.
Any kind of limited edition 911, it's always going to be a good investment.
Yep, absolutely. And in terms of quirky stuff, a 67 Volvo P1800 went for $44,250 at collecting. You know, famous for The Saint, the TV show.
Yep.
Another cool looking coupe, very un-Volvo-like. What did you think of that one?
Well, it's not a car I'd like to be replacing the glass in, but you know, very unusual sort of design there. But you know, again, probably a good buy. I'm not really across the sales
Across
of
the
Volvos.
Volvos. Have you owned a Volvo, Cameron?
No, I've never owned a Volvo,
No?
Rich. When I was growing up, doctors had Volvos.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's quite a cool looking.
It is.
Volvo
It's a
they
very
are.
unique, and I think there's a resto mod version of that the Sion company has recently. Maybe we'll put a story on the site about that in the coming days. But interesting week on the block. Again, lots of good buying. Definitely a buyer's market out there.
But stuff's still moving. Stuff's
no question.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun time, and let's look forward to seeing what comes across the block next week.
All right, so that's it for episode 2. Rich, great to have Mark along today. That was a really enjoyable interview. Well done. If you want to know more, head on over to retrorides.com.au and please subscribe. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
See you next week.